Did you know? Did you know that in one moment you could lose the sparkle in your eyes? Did you know that in that moment you wouldn't have time to even say goodbye? Did you know that though you didn't realize it at the time, a part of your soul had just died, leaving a gaping hole behind? Did you know that the grief and sorrow and pain would never completely end, staying with you always like some lifelong friend? Did you know that you must go on, for the life that you have left is still God's greatest gift to you? Did you know that one day He will put His loving arms around you, take away all the grief and pain and sorrow, and make you whole again? Did you know that He will bathe you in mother's love times 10? Did you know that He will let you see His pure white light and your eyes will sparkle once again? As I said earlier, after my son told me what he had seen that had died, the sparkle in my eyes, I cried. This was the sobbing, deep-wrenching cry, but it was not a cry of grief. It was a cry of relief, because what had been going on inside of me for 37 years had made itself known manifestly in the physical dimension. It wasn't until I met Tom Olmson, the producer of this video, that he told me what it was that had died, and that was the inner child. And that's when the fog of uncertainty that I had had for so long was lifted, and things became clear to me. I realized that that inner child is really still alive on the other side. That was what was looking down at me on the table when I had my heart attack, laughing at my grimacing face where I couldn't breathe because a nurse was trying to hold me down. That was the fog of uncertainty was finally lifted. And from there, I have been able to move forward. Hopefully, the stuff that follow will be of interest to many people. I've been a upholsterer of custom, classic, and collector cars for 40 years. I still take great satisfaction at what I do. I give thanks every day that I can get out of bed and go do something. And I give thanks for the breath of life, because you never know how much you appreciate that gift until it feels like you got a 10-ton truck sitting on your chest. I know that one day He, on His chosen day, will tell me, Carl, it is your time. Come home to me. And I will again become one with that pure white light, mother's love times 10, and my inner child that waits. And then my eyes will sparkle once again. The charcoal portrait that you're looking at was done in 1979. In the early 70s, I had done custom interiors that had won many, many Best Custom Interior Awards. Then I got into classic cars, had cars that won Best Awards, including Pebble Beach in California with the classic cars. It was in 1977, as I stated previously, that I had the accident where I killed the guy. This portrait was done in 1979. Now, at that time, I had stopped my association with Beaver doing the classic cars and had started doing interiors for the Excalibur automobile. I had children that I had custody of from a previous marriage. I was living in Illinois, their mother was living in Michigan, and the courts mandated that I take them back so many times a year. Well, two of my sons decided that they wanted to go live with Mommy for a while. After they had been there for 6 months, they called me up and said, "Come and get us or we're running away from home." So I drove back to Michigan from Illinois, picked them up from their mother, and that was Jackson, Michigan, and drove up to Lansing, Michigan, where my sister Laura Cranston Gibney and her husband lived to visit for a time. And while there, my two sons and I went to a local mall, and they were having an artisan's fair there. While there, I happened to notice some portraits done by an artist, and I told my sons that I liked the way this particular artist did the eyes. And so at that time, perhaps even more than today, when a man had something happen to him that was hurting him on the inside, he tried to hide it from the outside world. In effect, it was like the statement's been made, the eyes are the windows to the mind. And he would try to pull the shades over the window so people could not look in. And I was no exception. I was trying to protect my family from the pain that I was feeling. And so when I sat down to have this portrait done, I had to sit still for about a half an hour. And I guess you could say unconsciously, I allowed that shade to go up. And this artist captured what was going on inside. You see, most people look at the eyes. They don't look into the eyes. And I would suggest for anybody that when you're talking to, say, an EMT or a police officer or a vet, that you not only look at their eyes, but look into their eyes, because exterior they may be looking like they are in perfect health, and when you look into eyes, it tells a completely different story. And if you happen to see Tony Stewart's news conference after his accident, or saw the advertisement on TV about the American Legion and the vet there, look into their eyes and then look into the eyes of this portrait. All three of us probably had differing stories, but the story in the eyes remained the same for all. Now in 1979, I still had a shop in Waukegan, Illinois, and it was not the best of neighborhoods, and my practice many times was to go down there in the middle of the night and a gas station owner that had the habit of going in early in the morning, short blocks from me, was shot and killed in his own business. So when I was in the shop in the middle of the night, I had a .25 automatic in my boot, and under a couch pillow was a zip gun with a .410 shotgun shell in it. After this portrait was drawn, my one son did not like the looks in the eyes of the portrait. And about a week after getting back to Illinois, I was going to go work at night, and when I looked for my two guns where I kept them, they weren't there, and I thought somebody had got in and taken them. It wasn't till the year 2014 when I was talking to my one son about this whole incident with Tony Stewart that he told me that he didn't like the look in my eyes and that he was the one that had made the guns disappear. When I saw the finished portrait, I realized that I had let the shades up, so to speak. And after that, I made a conscious effort to keep those shades pulled down to the outside world. I suppose in retrospect, I should have been more open. I'd say probably some people, particularly within my own family, felt that I was cold and uncaring, which in fact the opposite was true. I also could say probably that for years I was running from the emotions that that event in 1977 had in me and how I could make no sense of it. I've moved several times over the years, and that portrait has never hung on the wall. It has always been in a bedroom closet facing the wall. By the year 2013, I'd given up hope of ever getting an answer to my internal question of something had died in me that night, and what was it that had died? Then along came 2014 and Tony Stewart's accident. I guess in a figure of speech, you could say that I had a 600-pound gorilla that I tried to keep in the back closet, and Tony Stewart's accident caused that gorilla to be in the living room, so to speak, and I was able to deal with it. My son gave me a partial explanation, and then Tom Olmsen, the producer of this documentary, gave me my final answer. And as I said before, it was an unbelievable relief for me to realize that no, I wasn't crazy, that something had in fact died within me. Now, for people that know me that would look at this, they would say, yes, that's Carl sitting there. But in actuality, see, it is my premise, my belief, that every human that comes into this three-dimensional physical world was already a spirit entity before entering this body, continues as a spirit entity in this body, and will continue to be a spirit entity when this body is discarded. And so, in actuality, nobody has ever seen Carl. You only see the means that Carl gets around in. Over the years, I had questioned many times my own sanity. If I had obsessed upon my question, it would have driven me over the edge to self-destruction. So I tried to block this out of my mind as much as possible, but periodically events would occur, and there it was right in front of me again, and I had to deal with it. Now, after these revelations from my son and from Tom Ohmsen, I have another premise to state, and that is that each person also brings with them into this physical world their inner child. And that's most visible, say, from a 2 years old to 5-year-old child, where you see the light in their eyes, the sparkle. And then sometimes events happen that inner child recedes, and the sparkle and that light is gone. We hear much today about the term PTSD, and the general public, it's some kind of mental disorder, really don't understand it. But if the public as a whole could view that person not as having a mental problem, disability, a little bit crazy, but rather view them as a parent grieving over the loss of a child, and you only have one inner child. And I have known parents who lost a child at an early age, and though the intensity of the grief may lessen with the passage of years, it's always there with that parent. And it is my prayer, my hope, that society as a whole could look at these people not as nut jobs, mental disability, but as a grieving parent, that there would be a lot less confusion on their part and a lot more compassion. And for those that go through that inner torment, that hell on earth, if you would, if they could look at themselves as a parent grieving over the loss of a child, it is my opinion that there would be a lot less pain and a lot fewer suicides from people who have this term PTSD. I don't call it a disability, I call it a grieving process that is natural for any parent. And the person may present the grief, they may present anger, not at any individual person, but the whole situation. And that does not necessarily mean that they fit the term of bipolar. It's just different aspects of the same thing, dealing with an inner grief. It is finished. Amen.
I Obviously, it's impossible to include all of the events that could be of interest in a 54-year career in a short video such as this. Carl is available for speaking engagements to tell more of the rest of the story, particularly groups addressing issues of individuals with post-traumatic stress syndrome. Carl does not charge a speaking fee, but he does require reimbursement for expenses, travel, lodging, food, and so forth. Inquiries should be addressed to the address and contact number on your screen.
For myself, the production of this documentary has been both gratifying and painful. If the things presented here cause just one individual to step back from that last step into total insanity and self-destruction in an effort to escape that inner torment and pain, then any pain that I may have experienced will have been worth the effort. The production of this documentary has entailed multiple trips to the Flat 5 studio in Salem, Virginia, and our usual procedure was to do a segment and then have it on a DVD sent to me, and I would review it and we'd make changes and so forth. The last time that we made one where I made the statement that he would tell me that it was my time, in reviewing the video, it came to me that this could be stated just a little bit differently, and then it would become inclusive or universal. In other words, instead of he would say to me, he would say to you, it is your time. And from that, I used the rest of the statement to add 2 verses to the poem as it was originally written. And now you could say that the incident, the accident, the event was the alpha, and the day that arrives when he says, it is your time, that will be the omega for each of us. What you are looking at is the complete poem with the 2 additional verses, and now, in my perspective, the poem is indeed complete.
For information on how you can start your journey towards healing and recovering from the effects of PTSD, or to help others do the same, please go to the website address below.